So welcome everybody to BODHI MAGGA in this month of February. BODHI MAGGA, or Path to Awakening. Our purpose is to develop mindfulness of Sati, unification of mind, Samadhi, and wisdom, Panya, through the practice of stillness and insight meditation techniques. Of course, we don't do this in isolation. We also aim to understand and practice the Dhamma to follow the Noble Eightfold Path for liberation from unsatisfactoriness or stress is another good word. Our aim is to gather every first Friday. We try and do that. So every first Friday of the month from 6 to 8 using Skype. And in 2025, this year, we are exploring the 7 factors of awakening as taught by the Buddha, the Sapta Bojjhanga in Pali. And so today we will have this welcome and introduction to today's session, and then it will be followed by an interactive Dhamma workshop, a talk and meditation, in-session meditation that is led by our presenter, Paul. And then we'll close off with a few thoughts and blessings at the end. You'll also notice this picture of, I think a lot of you will probably recall. These are just 3 simple clay lamps that you'll see in any temple in Sri Lanka. And as you can see, the significance of this was lightness, illuminating the darkness, which is a reflection of the Dhamma that hopefully will provide that illumination in a world of not seeing, not being aware. And also you'll notice that these clay lamps are united in one flame, and that is the whole purpose of BODHI MAGGA as well. It is so that we as a community can share our experiences and insights and help each other to wisdom. So the theme, as I mentioned at the moment, is the 7 factors of awakening, and Paul will continue with his overview, which he started last session, particularly in relation to the importance of the 7 factors of awakening to stream entry, and then he'll focus in a more deeper sense the first Bojjhanga, which is Sati, or mindfulness. So Paul has practiced meditation for over 20 years across Europe.
Yeah, now I can get it here. I don't know why you can't get it. Try join BODHI MAGGA live.
Deepani, could you mute, please? Right.
I'm just trying to join. I'm on my mobile, but I'm trying to join on the laptop, but I just can't seem to get in. I can see you guys. It said they're waiting for me to join. I've sent the link on the message thread. If you could let me in, I really appreciate it.
You are in. We can see you and we can hear you.
Yeah, but this is on my mobile. I'm just trying to get you on my laptop. And it says BODHI MAGGA live there.
Right.
But it just won't let me in though. I've sent a message to you on it anyhow.
Right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So Paul, as I mentioned, he's practiced meditation for over 20 years across Europe, US, and Asia. And he has a wide knowledge of the suttas as well as of the Theravada meditative traditions. And he's on a continuing journey to optimize his own life for the practice of Dhamma. So that's just a quick introduction to today's program and to Paul. And if there are no further questions, I would now turn over the session to Paul, and we will proceed from there. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gihan, very much. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, superb. So what we're going to do today is really 3 parts. So one is We will start with some metta for a number of reasons. It's the end of the week. We may have been through some weekly stresses, and so this will be a way of us just calming the mind, calming the body, bringing some samadhi. And then we're going to talk briefly about why the awakening factors are so essential for liberation, and essential even for the first stage, even for stream entry, which the Buddha talks about quite a lot. So we're going to go into that. And then the main thing we're going to do today is to build on what we did last week. So those of you who were here, you'll remember that we talked about how the hindrances are what obscure the mind. They make it difficult, impossible even, to actually see how things are. But the awakening factors do exactly the opposite. They brighten, they purify, they uplift the mind, and they allow the mind to really see below the surface into what's going on, and are completely essential for liberation. So we're going to develop our conversation about that, and really in a very practical way, how to develop particularly Sati in this instance, which is, as you know, the first of the week, the awakening factors, to really counter each of the 5 hindrances. All right, so to begin with, if you are in a quiet place, that would be fantastic, but you are wherever you are. Some of you may be driving, some of you may be wandering around the house, doing what you need to do in the evening with your families. So you can do this however you are, in whatever situation you're in. Metta is something you can always do at any time, in any place, in any situation. So if you're able to close your eyes, you can allow them to close, but you can also do this equally well, open-eyed too. And so just wherever you are, in whatever posture you're in, just to allow the mind just to become aware, gently aware of just however the body is arranged. If you're sitting, just to know this posture of sitting. Just right now, I'm sitting. Or if you're standing, just to know, this is standing. This is the posture of standing. Or if you're walking around, the same, just to know this is walking around. Or if you're in some kind of activity, one or two of you may be driving, just to know the same thing. This is what I'm doing now. Just to settle the mindfulness, settle the awareness, just into whatever posture we're in, into whatever we're doing right now. And so there's a knowing, there's an awareness, just to whatever we're doing right now, the posture we're in right now. There's also an awareness of listening. And gradually, as the awareness comes to bear, it may also notice the breath. It may also pick up the in-breath and the out-breath. Just gently aware. The action of breathing.
You're just playing around. Where did you go? You just stopped this and then back. Which one did you put?
Something that's going on all the time. And knowing actually that this bringing awareness is also an act of care for ourselves. in bringing awareness to what's so right now, we're taking care of ourselves. We're actually being kind to ourselves. Because as we go through our busy lives, for many of us, sometimes rushing here and there, actually being aware is so important for our well-being and so essential for our growth, our spiritual growth. Really at the center of our spiritual growth. So this time devoted to awareness is actually really the most important thing we can do. And the wonderful quality of awareness of Sati is it doesn't judge. It just knows things just as they are. And particularly when it's connected, imbued with loving kindness, it has a lovely quality of acceptance. Accepting things just as they are. Whatever feelings may be there, whether they're pleasant or not so pleasant, or somewhere in between. Whatever thoughts may arise, whatever sensations there may be in the body. Just a lovely, gentle, accepting awareness. Without judging. It's just a lovely knowing. And so if there's any background restlessness, perhaps from the day, any anxiety of any kind, any discomfort of any kind, you can just gently know that, without trying to do anything with it, push it away, just to bring gentle awareness to it. Acceptance. We may notice as we do this that our breathing gradually gets deeper and longer. The in-breaths go deeper, and the out-breaths go longer. And with each breath, you can feel a very gentle letting go. You can allow each breath to let us feel calmer, ever more tranquil. Ever more present to each moment, just right here. right now. We can allow all thoughts, concerns of any kind, we can just gently let them go. Just put everything down, everything aside. Knowing that this is just such a wonderful, precious gift. It's a gift to ourselves, and it's also a gift to everybody around us. Because the calmer we are, the more gentle we are, the more loving we are, the more forgiving we are. We're also taking care of everybody around us, as well as ourselves. Our thoughts towards everybody around us become kinder and kinder, and more compassionate and empathic. And so to our speech, we actually want to say words that go to the heart, that people wish to hear, because they are loving. We want to act too, in a way that is lovely. And also knowing that the more lovely our thoughts and speech and actions, the purer we become in every way. Our conduct of every kind becomes more wonderful. Something that other people look to respect. Other people then look to us as a light, as an inspiration. Because they see that kindness. They too wish to be like that. And so in the same way as one candle can light another, and another, and another, so too in really filling our hearts with loving kindness in this way, we too become that candle that lights other candles. And our life becomes deeply purposeful. We make a difference to ourselves and to everybody around us. And when we remember that the Buddha said that one who lives for even a finger snap with a heart of metta is somebody who is fulfilling his teaching, is following his teaching, how much more so if we spend many moments, many minutes, many hours, many days, weeks, months, years, really bringing forth a heart of loving kindness, living with metta. We can allow whatever feelings of loving kindness may be there to spread outwards, to spread upwards to all the beings above us and below, to whatever beings may be there, and all around, in every direction, in front, behind, and to the sides, in every way, in every direction, pervading the whole world, the whole universe, all beings, without exception, with a heart of loving kindness. With boundless gentleness, wishing safety for all beings everywhere. Wishing happiness for all beings everywhere. And wishing liberation, the highest happiness, the complete freedom from any kind of suffering for all beings everywhere. And just before we finish, we can drop into the heart an inclination, an intention that as we go through the rest of this day, the rest of this week, the rest of this month of February, the rest of the whole of this year, 2025, and actually the rest of our lives, that we will live with a heart of loving kindness as far as we can. We can remember that in the wonderful conversation that the Buddha had with Sakka, king of the Devas, that one of the 7 things that Sakka committed himself to, the merit of which was so great that he became Sakka. One of those things was that whenever anger arises, he would let it go as soon as possible. He would not allow hostility or ill will to pervade his mind. In the same way as when a drop of water strikes a hot pan, it evaporates quickly. So too, whenever we feel even a little bit of irritation, annoyance, we bring forth awareness and we just let it go. We just let it go. We just let it go. and that we can make that commitment to ourselves for our own well-being, for our own growth, and for the safety and protection of everybody around us. That's a beautiful commitment to make. To live with love. Wonderful. And so if your eyes are closed, you can gently allow them to open. Just bring our attention back. And so that leads us into this very, very important conversation which Gihanta mentioned right at the start of the call, which is given that for us, all of us, to attain liberation, the first stage of that is stream entry. And that these 7 factors of awakening that we are speaking about are really of the essence to do that. Why is that? Why is that? And also, since we're talking about stream entry, since that's such an important part of our focus for those of us who may not be stream enterers yet, and those of us who already are, whatever the next path and fruit is, it's very, very useful to remind ourselves why entering the stream is so powerful. It's so important that the Buddha placed so much emphasis on it. That when we enter that field, that Aryan field, that noble field, we are entering this extraordinary company. The Buddha gave many similes for what happens when we attain stream entry and the freedom that we experience at that point from suffering. One of which is a simile involving water. So we all know water. So imagine just 4 or 5 drops of water, literally 4 or 5 drops of water. So imagine, for example, you are in the kitchen and you turn the tap on, but so slightly that you can see the individual drops falling. And imagine you watch 1 drop fall, 2, 3, 4, let's say. It's not a lot of water. Now, the Buddha's comparing that minuscule, comparatively, type of water, amount of water, to all of the drops of water in the oceans, which is unimaginable. It's inconceivable to us just how many drops of water are in the oceans. It's practically infinitesimal. So that extreme difference, unimaginable, virtually inconceivable difference, is the difference that the Buddha gives between us attaining stream entry and the amount of suffering that we will then experience beyond that point, to if we remain in samsara, if we don't. So if we don't attain stream entry, if we remain in samsara and go through whatever we're going to experience, that is the difference in suffering. It's unimaginable. And so, as many of you will know, he spoke about once stream entry is attained, there's a maximum of 7 lives, you know, in the sense sphere. So these are human lives, or in the Devaloka. And these are nice lives. So these are lives, you know, of good family, as the Buddha said, you know, kula buddhena, so good families. So these are not lives of the kind that you can live in the human realm, and people do live. Many people, even right now, you know, people who are desperate, hungry, going through all kinds of horrendous deprivation. So these are lives of relative comfort, just 7 lives. And also with that stream entry is also, as many of you will know, complete protection from the lower realms and the off the scale suffering that we have endured in the past and will endure if we stay in samsara. So that's one really, really extraordinary aspect to attaining stream entry. And it's very, very, very worth, particularly for any of us who have not yet attained stream entry, but even those of us anybody who has, to reflect on what you've accomplished if you have done it, just how important that is, to reflect with happiness about it. So also with stream entry is the extraordinarily beautiful purity that comes with it. So the Buddha speaking about how our sila is really purified with stream entry. So we become incapable of harming other beings, of killing other beings, intentionally killing other beings. Become incapable of taking what is not given. We become incapable of sexual misconduct. We become incapable of an intentional lie. And so this kind of purity is so rare, you know, as we all know in the world, so rare. So attaining stream entry, we have permanent access to this kind of purity. And so when we reflect on that, it becomes so compelling. It becomes just so beautiful. It becomes just like, I want to do that. I really want to have that. Another thing to reflect on is the benefit that we give as Arians, as stream enterers, when we attain that, the benefit that we create for everybody around us. So if you consider that the Buddha said, if you give a gift to an animal, even a relatively lowly animal, like a little tadpole or something like that, the merit from that is extraordinary. At least 100 times what we have given. So then even 100 times greater than that is giving to an unvirtuous person. So in this particular case, a person whose sila is not good, which is actually most people. There's very, very, very few people who go through their lives never telling lies, for example, or not killing beings. I mean, you know, like flies and things. It's very, very, very rare. So the merit from giving to an unvirtuous person is 100 times greater than the merit of giving to an animal. But then even beyond that is the merit of giving to a virtuous person, so somebody who has really good sila. So that's 100 times greater still than giving to the unvirtuous person. And then 100 times even greater than that is the merit from giving to a stream enterer. Amazing. Like, so if you actually do the maths, it means that very great that the gift to an animal is, the gift to a stream enterer is actually 10 million, so 8 zeros, greater than to an animal, which is like, wow, that's like crazy. Or the merit even between being giving to a stream enterer compared to giving to an unvirtuous person, to somebody who doesn't have good sila, is 100,000 times greater, 100,000 times. So what it means is that when we attain stream entry, we're creating just an unimaginable field of merit, you know, as the Buddha says, a punya keta, field of merit for everybody around us. So if we become a stream mentor, or for those of us, anybody who already is, every gift that our husband, our wife, our children, our families, our friends, other people give to us is creating colossal, unbelievable merit for them. And if they then dedicate that merit to their liberation, can you imagine how powerful that is? You know, the kind of karma they're creating for themselves. So in really dedicating our lives to stream entry, we are not just doing ourselves a service, which we can hardly even imagine, like the power of it. We're also doing everybody around us an unimaginable service. And this is just so important because when the heart can really connect with this, it really can power our practice so powerfully. You know, it just means that our practice becomes the most important thing in our lives. So how we go through our days becomes the most important thing. How we speak to our children, how we speak to our partners, how we conduct ourselves in every way, really bringing forth the Dhamma into our hearts, starting with Sati, starting with mindfulness, starting with awareness, that when we do that and we devote our lives to that, every single part of our lives, that our lives just become so extraordinarily purposeful. It's actually hard to imagine just how much. So the Buddha spoke about how in order to become a stream enterer, the heart and mind, the heart has to see how things actually are. It has to penetrate the way things are. And in particular, it has to see how things, everything, is dependently originated. In other words, arises from causes. Nothing. So nothing happens by chance. Nothing is accidental. So, you know, our birth didn't happen by accident. How we look, our appearance, is not accidental. What kind of family we're born into, you know, and the kind of surroundings we have, the kind of wealth the family has, is not accidental. The kind of status we have in life, social status, is not accidental. The kind of respect we garner in our lives is also not accidental. The kind of gain, things that we gain in our lives, are not accidental. And so to the opposite for all of those, you know, whatever poverty, disrepute, loss, all of these things, they all arise because of previous causes, previous conditions. So they're neither accidental, nor are they being created by some external, powerful God, you know, Brahma type figure, creator God, you know, however we want to think about that. I mean, there are some extraordinarily powerful beings out there, but how our lives turn out is created by previous causes, and those are from our own actions. So the Buddha said, there's a wonderfully sort of pithy description that the Buddha gives of how things are, of dependent origination. So the Buddha said, one who sees dependent originations, in other words, one who sees cause and effect, is one who sees the Dhamma. One who sees the Dhamma sees cause and effect, sees dependent origination. And actually, if you want to write this down, this is actually worth writing down, because it's such a powerful, to the point summary of the entire Dhamma that the Buddha gave. So the Buddha said, upon stream entry, in order to gain stream entry, you see this, you know what? That when this exists, that is. When this exists, that is. So imasmin sati idam hoti. When this exists, that is. So we'll talk later about what that means. And then he said, from the arising of this, that arises. From the arising of this, that arises. So imasupada, idam upajjati, from the arising of this, that arises. And then the Buddha said, when this does not exist, that is not. When this does not exist, that is not. So imasmin asati, idam nahovati, when this does not exist, that is not. And then finally, from the cessation of this, that ceases. From the cessation of this, that ceases. Imassa nirodha, idam nirucchati. So in those 4 lines of Dhamma, so just to go through this once again, when this exists, that is. From the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that is not. From the cessation of this, that ceases. That, those 4 lines, is the whole of the Dhamma, which is absolutely astonishing. And so what the Buddha is talking about, what he's pointing to, is how everything depends on something else. Everything, without exception. Nothing arises, nothing without cause. And the doorway into stream entry is seeing this, directly seeing and knowing this. So for example, this moment right now, literally right now, whatever experience all of us on this call are having is arising dependent upon previous causes. Every aspect of it. All of the seeing, all of the hearing, all of the smelling, all of the tasting, all of the tangibles, all of the cognizing in the mind, all of it is arising dependent upon previous causes. And so it's arising and instantly passing away. And then a new set of conditions are arising, instantly passing away, everything. And so when the mind sees this and it knows this, the conditions are there for stream entry. And in order for the mind to see and know this, the 7 awakening factors must be developed. Because it's these awakening factors that brighten the mind, that purify the mind, that give the mind enough power to actually see and know dependent origination as it is. So, you know, what we're talking about is just so, it's so profound, because it's really, it's our whole lives. It's everything. It's the whole world. It's how existence is. It's just this arising and passing away continually of conditions dependent upon previous conditions, previous causes. And Sati, the first of the 7 awakening factors, is the initiator of all of the rest of the awakening factors, the initiator. And what it does is it creates a ripple effect. So if you can actually imagine, you know, we use the word ripple, but if you can actually imagine, you know, we've all done it, right, as kids and probably as adults too. You know, we stand by the water's edge and pick up a pebble and throw it in the water. And so you know what it's like when the pebble hits the water, what happens? Immediately, brum, you get that kind of cascade of ripples that happen as soon as the pebble hits the water. So those ripples are the awakening factors created by Sati, created by mindfulness. That's how powerful it is. That's how important it is. So that's what we're going to work on. Okay, so before we move into our little Sati exercise, does anybody have any thoughts about that? Any questions? You might have a lot or little or none. I mean, it's like I said, it's so deep. It's so extraordinary. You know what we're talking about, dependent origination. That something we could talk about all day, every day for the next 5 years and not cover all the aspects of it. But it's but if you have any immediate questions, we can certainly cover those.
Paul, I thought something that came to my mind, you beautifully explained the causal phenomena. Every effect has a cause. Everything happens because of causes. And because watching these cause and effect with these 4 stanzas, what happens eventually, you said that you reach stream entry, because that self-view, I am doing it, I am walking, I am talking, I am feeling, that concept breaks, isn't it? Because exactly. It is because of causes it happens and there's no person doing it. So the personality view gets shattered.
Exactly. Exactly.
So when there's no I, then there is no my, this, my, that, my belonging, my family, my loved ones, my precious thing. So the suffering is so much less, because if there is nothing that belongs to you, there is no agony about losing that, or when they change and when they're lost, possession, exactly. People. So then you can see that how a huge amount of suffering breaks away. Just because you crack that personality view.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Through seeing dependent origination, exactly as you said, you see that it's causes and conditions. It's that there's nobody behind it at all. You know, literally at all. It's just impermanent, empty conditions arising and passing away. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you, Shirema. Exactly. Wonderful. Any other observations before we move on? Okay. Now, what we're going to do is a very practical exploration of cause and effect, and particularly with respect to the 5 hindrances that we talked about last week. So you remember the 5 hindrances obscure the mind. And you may remember, those of you who are on the call and those of you who know the suttas, you'll know the 5 similes that the Buddha gave for how the mind is obstructed by the hindrances. And the awakening factors clear the mind. So, for example, when we're looking at water, and the water, we can't see the bottom because it's obstructed in some way by, for example, red dye, which is the simile for kamachanda, for desire. The awakening factors, when they come to fruition, clear the water so you can see through it. So in our practice, the Buddha spoke about the importance of, with the hindrances, seeing the origination, seeing the arising of it, and then seeing the passing away of it, seeing the cessation. And it's incredibly useful as we, particularly as we're all on this call, I think, lay people, but even actually if we're monastics, to be able to watch as we go through our daily lives how these hindrances actually arise in our minds, what causes them, because they're not arising without a cause. So, for example, with desire, with kamachanda, what leads to the arising of that particular hindrance in our mind? So, if we can train ourselves through mindfulness, through sati, to actually see desire as it arises, see what's causing its arising, and then crucially also what causes it to subside, what causes its cessation, that is an extraordinarily powerful aspect of the practice. The Buddha describes it, for example, in the four foundations of mindfulness. If you look at the fourth foundation, he actually specifies the five hindrances as an aspect of mindfulness, to actually see them and know them as they are. Because normally what happens when the hindrances arise as we go through our lives is we're lost in them, and they unconsciously they run the mind. So we're all familiar with what happens when desire arises in the mind. It let's say, we talked last time about desire for food, right? So my example of desire for ice cream, it arises in the mind unseen because there isn't strong enough mindfulness, and because it's there, because the desire is there, it then becomes like a computer program. So intention then arises to actually fulfill the desire. It puts the body into action. We go to the kitchen, open the fridge, and start spooning the ice cream. So when they're not seen, when they go unseen, these hindrances lead to not just the hindrance being in the mind, but actually it's starting to affect other parts of our behavior too. It starts to affect what we say. It starts to affect our bodily actions too. So particularly with ill will, when ill will is unseen in the mind, we start thinking dark thoughts, and that then conditions our speech and our actions of many kinds. So this is what we're going to explore in some depth. If you have your Dhamma diaries to hand, that would be fantastic. So for anybody who wasn't on the call last week, it's really this practice of journaling. It's almost like journaling your mind, but really the key is to journal parts of the practice which really to really use it as a tool for your practice. That's the key. So, for example, particular insights that arise, to document those, particular practices that work for you, to document those. And one of the ways you can use it, which is what we're going to do now, is as a kind of diagnostic for your mind, to be able to, so you look in the mind, and it just helps to actually write things down rather than just to think about it. So if you have your Dhamma diary to hand, fantastic. If you don't, any piece of paper will do, and a pen. So we're going to start with the first of the five hindrances, kamachanda, desire. So last week, you'll remember that we scored it on a scale of 1 to 5 on how much we see it affecting our minds and affecting our lives. And so where 1 is not at all, or hardly at all, for those of us who are in that fortunate position, not including me, 5 is, it really, really afflicts our minds. Okay, so we're now going to take this to the next step, which is to really look at, specifically, we're going to write down 3 to 5 things in your life which from experience, from watching the mind, from your practice, hook the mind with desire. These can be anything. They can be particular people, they can be particular foods, they can be particular places, they can be particular types of clothing, particular types of furniture. They can be other kind of lokadhamma. So, for example, the desire to be admired. the desire for praise. You know, these are all things which can, upon which desire can arise. So 3 to 5 things which you know affect your mind in desire. So that's the first step. And then having done that, what we're then going to look at is why is really the question. Why? So those of you who read the suttas, you'll have seen the phrase the Buddha uses a lot, which is signs and features. So the Buddha, for example, when he's talking about guarding the sense doors, he says, if you do not guard the door, let's say the eye base, the mind will grasp at the signs and features of attractive objects. What are these signs and features? It's really interesting. So if we take the 3 to 5 things that you've written down, we're then going to do an exploration of what is it? What is it that the mind is getting hooked by? What are these signs and features of these attractive things? Because really what's happening is that, let's say it's a visually attractive object. Let's say it's another person. Let's say it's a person that we're attracted to. It could be even our own wife or husband. That would be nice. But it can be anybody. Okay. So on seeing that person, so there's contact. There's contact between the internal eye base and the external forms of the person. Eye consciousness arises. And upon that contact, feeling and perception and other mental factors arise. So perception observes, it notes the signs and features of that particular person, and it identifies that as attractive, as desirable, as wished for. And because all of us, perception operates differently in all of our minds, right? So we might find different people attractive. So for each of us to actually be able to see what is it, what are the signs and features of another person that our mind finds attractive, is very, very helpful to observe. The same with another attractive thing. Let's take praise. Why is it, for those of us whose minds are particularly attracted to getting praise, what is it? What is it about being praised that's so attractive? What is it that when we hear praise at the ear door, for example, you know, somebody says something like, "Oh, that was fantastic." What is it about that then triggers desire in the mind? Like, that's so good. Thank you for saying that. What is that? What's it doing in the mind? So these are the signs and features that we're trying to identify here. The same with particular foods that we're drawn to. Those foods will have particular characteristics, particular signs and features. It could be the saltiness. It could be the sourness. It could be the sweetness. You know, different foods have different qualities, right? So there are certain things, and also about how they look. It could be the shape of the food. It could be the smell of the food. It could be the color of the food. All of these, the signs and features of the food, which make it attractive to the mind, which make it wished for. And so on contact with this particular food, you know, whether contact at the tongue base when we taste it, contact at the eye base when we see it, even contact at the ear base, you know, for sizzling food. You know what it's like when you go into a Chinese restaurant and they bring you a sizzling platter. That's contact at the ear base, right? And if it's food that we like, desire arises. So we're just really we're taking the time to identify these signs and features of these particular things. Another thing can be furniture in the house. You know, for those of you who really like kind of aesthetically pleasing things, what is it? What are these signs and features that attract the mind? If you go into a furniture store and you find you're really being drawn to particular sofas or tables. Why? What are those signs and features that are drawing the mind? Because it's not accidental, and as Shiroma said earlier, it's not you. It's these impersonal forces of mind that are creating this. In this case, perception. So we're really developing this clear comprehension, in this case, of how perception is operating in our mind. Okay, was that clear? Does anybody want to ask any questions? All right, fabulous. So let's just take a few minutes. We'll take 5 minutes. So remember what we're doing. You're writing 3 to 5 things which you know the mind is attracted to. Things that you see, hear, smell, taste, sense in the body, think about even. Gihanta, yeah, you've got a question?
Just a quick one, quick comment. So you asked about, what do these features do? Now, say something like approval. You like approval because at the end of it, there's a affirmation of self. If you get approval, yourself gets affirmation. But if it's like a food, like say chocolate or ice cream, it's not necessarily a self-affirmation, but it's more enjoyment of some sort. So I see a little difference there. So yeah, with approval, it's a feeling, it's affirmation, and feeling good about yourself. Whilst with a food, it's just that bare experience of enjoying it. So I just noticed a slight difference in why that particular thing was desired. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Definitely, yeah. No, that's a great observation. I mean, if you think about, and I think most of us are familiar with the Loka Dhammas, these things which turn the world, right? So if you think about the let's say in quotes, the positive Loka Dhammas, so praise, status, repute, gain, and pleasure. They operate in different ways in the mind, exactly as you're saying, Gihanta. So some of them really speak to that sense of self. They sort of they puff up the self in some way. Some things are purely sense-based pleasure, like you said, food, or for example, if you get a massage. They also, in a subtle way, they also reaffirm self, because unless there's clear mindfulness, we experience it as I'm enjoying this. So that there is also a subtle sense of self affirmation, but as you say, it's much clearer there with things like the desire for praise or the desire for status and that sort of thing. And some of them are kind of both. For example, gain. Like let's say, your boss says to you, Gihanta, I'm going to double your salary, right? So there's both like, oh, I have more money. And also when the money actually arrives in your bank account, it also at a material level manifests in that way too, right? So yeah, there's both a mental impact and sometimes also a more physical aspect to it too. Yeah. Great. Any more thoughts, questions? All right. So yeah, so if you just write away, if you just scribble away for a few minutes, so 3 to 5 things, and then the harder bit is really looking at these signs and features. What is it? What is it that's making them attractive? What is it when there's not really strong mindfulness will lead to desire arising? Okay, and then we'll do a sharing in a couple of minutes. Okay. Actually, before we share, let's do the second part of this. All right, so if we just remember the Buddha's words that we spoke about earlier in terms of dependent origination. So from the arising of this, that arises. From the arising of this, that arises. So in this particular instance, from the arising of these attractive objects and the particular perception that relates to them, craving arises, desire arises. So there's a clear cause and effect. There's the attractive object and the way it's being perceived, and craving, desire, kamachanda. Okay, from the arising of this, that arises. So the craving does not arise without a cause. There's a clear cause. And then let's reflect on another of the lines the Buddha gives. From the cessation of this, that ceases. So how does that work in this case? So let's go back to the supposedly attractive object. So in order for the object to seem attractive to us, it has to be perceived in a particular way. And fundamentally, it needs to be perceived through the lens of what is ultimately wrong view, through a misunderstanding of what it actually is, of its real nature. So when the mind perceives it as it actually is, then craving ceases. So this is very, very, very important. And Sati, mindfulness, plays a very, very crucial role in this. So if you look at the 3 to 5 things that you wrote down and look at the signs and features of those things that you thought about, you know, the things that you know your mind and how perception works in your mind finds attractive. And let's ask ourselves this question: what would lead to the cessation of that notion, of that idea that this is attractive? So let's take a really obvious example. Okay, so let's go back to the attractive person example. So in order for the mind to perceive this person as attractive, there has to be something about their face, the shape of their face, the shape of their body, about the kind of words that they speak, their tone of voice, maybe the clothes that they wear, their mannerisms. There has to be something, certain signs and features that the mind perceives as attractive, right? It's fairly obvious, isn't it? Now, suppose that rather than the mind perceiving those signs and features, those supposedly attractive signs and features, instead it perceives so rather than, for example, seeing this attractive face, what it really sees is what it actually is, which is a skull, and, you know, hair which is like stuck to the skin, that we call eyebrows, or hair on the head, and it actually sees and perceives like individual hairs, or rather than, again, perceiving this attractive face, it just sees skin. And it knows skin, and it knows that all of our skin is full of bacteria, for example, you know, and I could keep going with this kind of thing. That is actually what it is, and it's in not seeing this that we do find other beings attractive. So that would be an example. It's not the only one by any means, but that would be one example of seeing something with correct perception, with the way that it actually is. And when the mind sees it in that way, you get the cessation of craving. All right. Another way of perceiving accurately something which the mind normally finds attractive is through its impermanence. So let's supposing we see this attractive person, supposedly attractive person, but then we imagine this person 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30, 40. Now they're really, really, really old. And this nice smooth skin or smoothish skin that we can see now is all like wrinkled, and you know, whatever beautiful hair they had has all fallen out, and whatever lovely sparkling teeth they have fallen out or are all blackened, and whatever's happened with old age. And this nice posture that they have, they're now bent over like a hinge bracket, as the Buddha says. And so we're actually seeing the impermanence of the body of this being. What happens when the mind actually connects with the reality of this is that the desire, the craving dissipates. And if we really see it, if the mind really connects, the craving just drops away completely. So there are lots of plenty of other perceptions as well, but those are just two examples of how, when with right, really seeing something with accurate perception, with right view, the craving drops away. So you get with a cessation of wrong view, you then get the cessation of craving. Okay, so with each of the things that you wrote down, the 3 to 5 things that you wrote down, just ask yourself, what perception could I bring to this that would actually help the mind let go of the craving? So for example, with food, it could simply be the perception of impermanence, you know, that this lovely, wonderful feeling of ice cream, the pleasant feeling that comes, is going to go. We know that. We've all done that countless times, even in this lifetime, had the pleasure of it arise, and then not that long afterwards it's gone. Or if you have the kind of mind that can really connect with the Asubha nature of it, you can actually imagine what happens when that food goes in your mouth and down your food pipe and into your stomach and into the digestive system. You know, when the mind can actually connect with the reality of that, the ice cream doesn't seem so appetizing. And there are other perceptions too. You know, like for example, if we think back to how the ice cream actually got to our plate, and you know, all of the dukkha of probably a lot of beings that suffered, including animals that you know, so basically a lot of suffering that had to happen for the ice cream to arrive. This would be another type of perception. So with each of the things that you've written down, just to look at, oh, if I look at it this way, you know, which actually it is, I don't feel so much craving, or even any craving for it. All right, good. So just with each of the 3 to 5 things, just to jot down whatever occurs in your mind, and whatever you, particularly you know from experience, leads to this thing not seeming so attractive. Okay, just another 30 seconds or so. Right. So this is an initial exploration of this. So this is not like a one time in your life exercise. This is the beginning, just the beginning. All right. It'll be very, very useful to hear a couple of shares about this. If anybody is interested or willing to share. Hunter.
Since you picked on me. The one thing that came to my mind was with all these things, so, you know, whether it's a lovely food or an attractive person or some sort of self-affirmation, if you start thinking about the transient nature of that, you realize that sort of your happiness is on thin ice because you're basing whatever happiness or affirmation on something that is transitory, and if things change, then you know you're going to lose that happiness. If you feel really good about something, say based on say somebody praising you, then the moment that somebody criticizes you or the praise goes away, then you're sort of back to square one. So with all of these things, it's that the impermanence for me is noteworthy because yeah, you're putting your happiness on thin ice if you don't see the impermanence of that particular object. So for me, that was my observation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, exactly. And really seeing, like you said, that actually everything, but without exception, is subject to change. You know, it all has that viparinama nature. So anything that the mind clings to in desire, you're guaranteed. There's literally a guarantee that you will suffer, whatever that.
Yeah, having said that, we don't always have that view, and I find, say for instance, when I'm eating a chocolate, you're so, I mean, personally, you're so into it that suddenly all stress disappears because you're so much, you know, enjoying that so much. Or say it's an attractive person, and you're sort of so focused on that. So this sort of attractive thing, if you don't have the awareness, you're so much into it that there's no stress because there's almost like a unity of mind, but based on maybe something that's unsubstantial. But at that moment in time, you're so engaged. But that's why I guess it's important to kind of be able to step aside and not let it overtake you, because that whatever it is going to change, and then everything will fall away.
Right, exactly. I mean, what you're describing, Hunter, is exactly how craving is. So with the pleasant object, whatever it is, it's a person, it's chocolate. You initially experience the gratification of it, which can be a lot. It really can be a lot. If it's a really attractive person and you're hanging out with them, and maybe you're having nice food, and maybe you take them on vacation, and all of that, the gratification can last quite a long time, seemingly so. But there will come a point when things change, and not in a good way. So definitely, and when that happens, if there isn't mindfulness, if there isn't awareness, you are gonna suffer. It's going to be like a dart, as the Buddha describes, that kind of like stabs you in the side, and you're going to go, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. And
it's like the highs and the lows, right? You get a high, but then you get a low afterwards. Yeah,
exactly. So in the suttas, when the Buddha speaks about a worldling, an unlearned worldling, asutva tujana, that's what he's speaking about. He's speaking about somebody who doesn't understand and hasn't practiced to actually see things as they are. And so the mind gets caught, in the same way as a fish gets baited. It sees this thing in the water wriggling around, bam, and then at some point the hook digs in. Yeah, definitely. A very important thing about this, because we're talking about sati and the quality of sati, the quality of mindfulness, is that with desire, and in fact with any mental factor, but in this particular case desire, is that when we bring mindfulness to the craving, that's when it's kind of like bringing the mind face to face with it. You know what it's like when you look at yourself in the mirror and you look straight on, and you just like literally like face to face. That's what the mindfulness does. So with craving, you come face to face with craving. It's like, oh, this is craving. This is craving. And so in doing that, you see it's not like going back to what we were talking about earlier about the non-self of it, the non-self, the anatta nature of it. It's not like I am craving. It's just this empty force of craving. And then, so the sati allows you to see that. It's just, it's just desire. It's just desire. And it sees the nature of desire. How desire, it takes us towards this pleasant seeming thing, and then grasps. It really grips. It gets a hold of it. And it can, it's so powerful.
I mean, that's so important, because if it was there's no escape. Like you said, it's just craving. Then there is an escape, because it's not me, or I'm not wedded to it. It can be broken, but generally it doesn't work like that, isn't it? You think, oh, it's my craving, or I'm doing this, and there's no escape. But you're saying if you can notice it, then you can escape. That's
right. Yeah, that's what the sati does. It breaks the ignorance. It breaks the avidya. It's like, it's like you're shining a light on this thing. What was previously in the darkness, you get a torch. It's like, whoa, that's what this is. It's like a completely different experience. It's waking the mind up. That makes sense.
Paul, I was thinking that the craving and the desire is because of that pleasant feeling we get because of the object, isn't it? Totally. We get hooked onto the feeling, the pleasant feeling, the satisfying feeling is what we want to keep going, keep maintaining. So the object is there, the object causes the feeling, but when you actually think of it, it's not even, say, the husband and the wife. It's not even the husband that the wife loves. It's the feeling that the husband gives in her mind. She's craving her own feeling.
Exactly.
And say, I love you, my husband.
Very true. Very true.
So if you watch your feeling, and the feelings are also impermanent, arising, passing, transient, as Gyanta said, the own feeling is transient. So why try to feed it and maintain it and make it bigger and make it mine when it has it arises with causes and passes with causes because of the object?
Exactly.
Actually, you can separate the object with the feeling. Most people, I love you business They love their own feelings, isn't it?
I love it.
Lovely.
That's exactly right. That's spot on. Yeah.
Because the minute the husband says an angry word or is unpleasant, as not giving you that feeling, then what happens? He becomes the nasty man.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So we are hooked on to our feelings. Even in the dependent origination, it is Vedana Pachya Tanha, isn't it?
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. So that whole thing that we're talking about, you know, so on contact with, in this case, this pleasant person, there are particular misperceptions that the mind has. Pleasant feeling, exactly as Sharoma is talking about, arises. And then that leads to a cascade of other things, you know, particular thoughts that start spinning around the mind. Oh, this person's so lovely, and da da da. Let's go to the movies and whatever, right? The mind starts spinning. Intentions arise, chetana. So all of these mental things arise dependent upon contact, and particularly dependent upon perception, how the mind is perceiving this particular object. And so that's why that mindfulness, bringing the mindfulness forth and just seeing that it's just craving, you know, and where necessary, bringing these other perceptions, you know, actively bringing in these other perceptions that we're talking about, is really, really powerful. Fantastic. We're going to move on to the next hindrance in a moment. Does anybody else have any thoughts to share? Further thoughts?
Yeah, just a
Right.
really quick one, Paul. So just picking up on what Shiroma said, the feeling. Now, so you take ice cream. So you take, say, okay, so the first scoop, right? Fantastic feelings. Now, well, because it's so good, somebody says, no, okay, you love it so much. Here's 10 more scoops. And if you're going to eat the 10 more, the object is still there. The object hasn't changed. In fact, you got more objects.
Yeah.
But what happened to your feelings? You can't put 10 into your, you know, you start vomiting, right? So that's thank you, Shiroma, for that. But yeah, it's also the feeling, absolutely, because the objects were there, but your feeling towards the object changed.
Yeah. So I just following on from that, if you don't mind, Paul.
Please.
We figured out is a feeling. So when you crave for the ice cream or you want a nice girl or someone, you can always think, oh, it's the feeling I'm craving. And this feeling will arise and pass. It arises to pass. It arises. Why does it arise? To pass. So if you focus on the feeling, I want to satisfy myself with this pleasant, pleasurable feeling, and that will come and go, that will come and go. So let the object go. So then you don't feel like you're a slave to the object anymore.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
Exactly. And what you said earlier, Sharoma, is also very, very key here, which is that the attractive object is actually being experienced entirely, 100% in our own minds.
Yeah.
100%.
Perception is also in your mind.
Exactly. All of it. So it's as you said, it's not them, it's what's happening inside us, inside of our own minds.
Yeah.
Ron, you're on mute, by the way. Ron, you're still on mute.
Yeah. No, it took me a while to get off mute. Sorry. Yeah, no, this is so valuable. I'd heard, but I hadn't really gotten what the Buddha was talking about the signs and features. And what I saw was, and it's what you've been saying, what the Buddha said, what Shiroma said about feeling, that perception marks things in accordance with how they feel to us. How the feeling, if it's pleasant, then, oh, this, I want this. This is something to want in the future. If it's unpleasant or painful, this is something to avoid or to get rid of. And if it's neutral, if it's neither pleasant, then I could ignore it, which leads to ignorance. And so, but that was really, really practical, because when I did the process that you suggested, it was actually looking and seeing, like, what were the marks and features, the specific marks and features that the brain, that the mind had recorded as pleasant. and then from that, then I could see like the different strategies you suggested, like Shiroma said, or Gihanta, or the Buddha said, you said, like see their impermanence, or decondition that recording, that perception of being pleasant, and see that if you see it as it actually is, it's not pleasant, it's actually unpleasant.
Right.
It's actually, yeah. So anyway, thank you. Really valuable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Shaina?
No, I think Kumari was first.
Thank you. Yeah, as usual on the screen, I can't see very well, but yes, whoever. Gihanta, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, it's Samantha. Go ahead, Kumari. Yeah.
Kumari. Yeah, it's Kumari. Yeah, it's Kumari here. Yeah, I was just following on from what Shiroma said, that and you all were saying as well. That was an interesting point, because I was just thinking to myself, why do I have this craving? And I was thinking, yeah, why is it that I want this? Because of my expectations and my ego, and yeah, because it's always there. That's a very big thing to get rid of. And then I was thinking now, okay, my feelings arise. I can't help it. They just come up. I have no control of it because of my roots. I have those 3 unwholesome roots within me still. So until I get rid of those, the root of greed or whatever, and desire, and ignorance anyway, they'll just arise. So then what I'll have to do is just be with that feeling and then watch it. I can see the arising, but I never see the ending of that feeling, because maybe I'm not there long enough to see it. So as soon as if I see the ending and show my mind that feeling has ended long enough, maybe that might be, I don't know, a way to see how I can sort of, not arise, because I can't help if I like something or someone, it just arises because of whatever reason.
Yeah.
Because of
Exactly. Yeah. So a couple of things about that, Kumari. So one is that actually the Sati is, the mindfulness has such an extraordinary quality that when it comes face to face, it sees the feeling, the pleasant feeling, as just pleasant feeling. That's all that it is. It's only pleasant feeling. It doesn't belong to you or to anybody else. It's just pleasant feeling. Just that in itself actually goes a long way to unsticking the mind from the object. Because when the mindfulness isn't there, then there's identification with the feeling. It's like, I'm feeling great, right? But when the Sati is there, when there's mindfulness, it's like, oh, it's just pleasant feeling. That's all that it is. And so it doesn't have that force on the mind, that pulling effect on the mind, if that makes sense. But, because the mind is disidentified with it. It's just this empty force of feeling. And then, as you said, if you can keep the Sati there long enough, you can actually observe the change in feelings, because they do change all the time. So you can see, oh wow, it's this pleasant feeling, and then maybe the pleasant feeling changes a bit, it gets a little less intense, or some unpleasant feeling comes in, and so you're seeing this constantly changing, arising and passing away of feeling. So it's no longer me, it's no longer my feeling, it's just feeling, and feeling is impermanent like everything else. Yeah, thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's what I need to practice.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Shaina?
Actually, it's Deepani. I'm just using my husband's laptop. It's just,
Oh, yes,
I get what you're saying about the senses and like the food and so on. I think it's easier to understand. But what I wrote for the site was seeing my children, basically. And then I get Shiromo's point. It's just not seeing them. It's the feeling you get. So then remember last time you spoke about the 6 kamachandas? So
yes.
it's not sight, then it becomes mind. Am I right? Because it's the feeling you get. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's still kamachanda, but it's not the sight then, it's the mind that. Am I right?
Yeah, well, technically what happens is so let's take your example of seeing your children.
Yeah.
Right? So at the eye base, so there's your eyes, there's the internal eye base, and then there's the external form, which is the children, right? When there's contact, so there's the actual seeing, there's eye consciousness, so there's like a knowing, there's the seeing, and there's like a knowing of seeing, right? And with that contact, feeling, amongst other things, arises. Now, feeling, Vedana, is actually mental. It's already in the mind. So yeah, so that pleasant feeling is in the mind already. So too the perception, you know, oh, my lovely kids, right? That's perception too. That's also a mental factor. And then any of the thoughts that then arise, all of these things are mental. So the Vedana is mental, the perception, the sanya is mental. You know, for example, let's say the intention to go to them and give them a hug arises as well. That's also in the mind. It's all in the mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. So I can relate that to from the arising of this that arises. So I can see that. But then if you're talking about the Sati being the it's a hindrance. Yeah. So how can you then you got to get rid of that feeling. And yes, I get Shiroma's point about husbands and wives anyhow, but but what I'm just trying to say is when the children come to see me, that will last a long time, you know, when they're 3 or 4 hours. And then, of course, when they leave, then that feeling is still there, but probably not as much. Mm-hmm. So how can you say it's arising and cessation? How can you... I get arising and cessation for everything else because I was thinking about food and feel of cotton on my body. So I can see that. But with the children, it just lasts a long time. And to me, it doesn't quite end. So I don't know whether you could explain that to me.
Yeah, sure. There's a few things there. So one is that the pleasant feeling that you're talking about is actually not, it's not like a block of feeling. What's actually happening is that in each moment, pleasant feeling is arising and passing away, and then there's a new moment of pleasant feeling that arises and passes away, and then a new moment and a new moment. So in each moment, feeling arises and disappears, and then a new moment, feeling arises and disappears. So at some point, as you say, the children go home, the children leave, right? So your mind is no longer in contact with them. You're no longer seeing them or hearing them, right? And so at some points, you know, let's say the phone rings and, you know, it's the gas man and they're telling you that they're not going to come and fix your boiler, right? So the mind's now in contact with something unpleasant. So now unpleasant feeling arises and passes away. So yeah, feeling is constantly arising and passing away, dependent upon whatever it's in contact with. So with your children, because you love your children, generally speaking, pleasant feeling arises and passes away. And then there are other things when it's unpleasant feeling that arises and passes away. But it could even be with your children. That so let's say one of your children comes and they say, Deepani, you know, you know that money that Granny gave me. Well, I gambled it on these horses, and actually I've lost all my money, right? So on hearing that, maybe not so much pleasant a feeling arises, right? Unpleasant feeling might arise. Yeah. So in other words, there's new contact. You know, in this case, at the ear base from the words that they're saying, and now unpleasant feeling is arising. So feeling, like everything else, just arises and passes away dependent upon conditions. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. Yeah, I can see the rising and passing. So how do you just relate that to hindrances? Because what you said last time was that these hindrances stop us from attaining Nibbana. I know I'm nowhere near that, but I'm just saying, how can you just say that's a hindrance? I can see it in the conceptual way, but if in relation to the children.
Yeah. So hindrances can and will keep arising, you know, very, very deep into the practice. So, but there'll be certain times when, particularly when you are, you know, when we're less in contact with the world. So for example, let's say we go on retreat, right?
All right.
So what happens when we go on retreat? first of all, we're not talking so much. We're going to be noble silence. So there's less contact at the ear base, right? Then we're not kind of looking around and, playing on our phones and all of this kind of stuff. So there's less contact at the eye base as well.
Yeah.
So what happens? The mind starts to calm down, because there's less, because there's less stimulation at the sense bases. So therefore, when feeling arises, there's less grasping. So there's less, and because there's less grasping, there's also these forces of craving or aversion or any of these hindrances tend to get weaker. So there are particular conditions that we can create for ourselves that will definitely weaken the arising of the hindrances. The force of them will depend on various things, one of which is our external conditions, but another one, a very important one, is the one that we're talking about, which is how willing we are to bring mindfulness even into our daily life. So for example, when you're with your children, if while you're with your children, you can keep some mindfulness there, so you can observe your own mind, observe some of the thoughts arising, observe your mind's reactions to things that they say, what you'll find is that craving and desire will be less strong. Or when they say things that you don't like, the annoyance, the irritation will be less strong. So the hindrances will actually be weaker, and they'll be weaker because you're actually bringing forth mindfulness, even in your daily life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Matish, did you want to say something?
Yes, I did actually. So I was thinking of what Gyanta was saying about pleasant sensations and unpleasant sensations, feelings rather, and we are caught in this cycle, aren't we, of running after pleasant sensations and trying to evade unpleasant sensations and completely forgetting about neutral sensations. I think we've done this as far as we can remember. I mean, take the smallest animal in the world, anything, a bacteria will run away from, where there is toxins, or into places where there is more sugar, or plant will go towards the sunlight away from the darkness. And it's a samsaric journey that we have brought this along with us. And I think it's a huge revolution to actually crack away from it, to break away from it.
100%.
Because it's a completely new way of living, actually. We no longer run after what is pleasurable and what is deemed as success as in society. The material wealth, and of course that is there for a reason, but in a sort of a hedonistic way, we don't do it. And we're not so worried about bad things happening to us either. Because our mind is now conditioned in a completely brand new way, that we can head towards equanimity, regardless of whether there's pleasure or regardless of whether there's pain around there. So I think the Vedanta, the mindfulness of feelings, is a core to this transformation. Watching the impermanence of that which is pleasant, watching the impermanence of that which is unpleasant, and watching the impermanence of the neutral sensations as well. This leads our mind to sort of really dissociate and disconnect from the rat's wheel, running wheel that we are stuck on. So I just think it's amazing how the Buddha has taught us, and it's a fourth of the Satipatthana, but it's so amazing just in that bit there itself. So yeah, I just want to share that.
100%. No, exactly. Yeah, it is a wheel, and it's so rare, as you said, and to actually have the Dhamma, it's like unimaginably rare in samsara. I mean, this group that we have right now, in the context of samsara, in the context of the unimaginable number of beings in samsara, the fact we now are here discussing the Dhamma, we have the Buddha's teaching, is kind of almost off the scale unimaginable in terms of the fortune that we have. So yeah, so really taking this time, this life, this moment, and practicing the Dhamma in the way we're talking about is just the highest and best use of our life. There's no question about it.
I just wanted to say again, deep gratitude, Paul, Shiroma, Matisha, everyone else in the call today. For me, I mean, it's almost like a revelation. Yes, I always identify myself with feeling. That's what I always do. Feeling is, I mean, maybe we've talked about this earlier, but to me today, it really struck home that what I identify as me is my feeling. So not to take it as me, but to just identify it as feeling. So that is something I will be more conscious about going forward. But that is what I do all the time, whether it's something, whether it's, whether it's desire, whether it's anger, whether it's any kind of, reaction, I identify myself with my feeling. Absolutely. But not to do that and to kind of assert that, look, it's just a changing thing. Yes, that's something I'm going to try and do more often now. So thank you very much, everybody. It's been that insight is a very good one. Thank you.
That's huge, Hunter, what you just said. Huge.
Paul, if I may add something to what Hunter just said.
Please.
So you come to now that shift, I need to watch my feelings. That's where this is. And then when you watch your feelings, say a pleasurable feeling comes, before I think Deepani was asking as well, how do you get rid of this feeling? So in fact, it is not anything to do with getting rid of, isn't it, Paul? We don't get rid of it. We just watch how it arises and passes. We just watch its quality. When we watch the quality of a feeling, that it arises to pass, and it's not powerful. Its inner quality is that it has to pass. So we don't give it that much energy and power that it's going to overtake us. We see that Achilles heel, or what you can see, you come, you will pass. That is your nature. You will pass. So this huge desire comes, you wait, and then when it passes, as Matisha mentioned a very important point, if the mind falls into equanimity, the upekkha, the peace. So you can actually show the mind, you wait, the desire came, you watched, you waited, and you knew it is going to go, and it leaves, and the mind automatically falls into this upekkha, the neutral. It automatically touches neutral. And then you touch neutral, you wait for the neutral, you actually focus on the neutral. And then the mind feels this churning, passion, energetic. It's like, it's what's the word? It's actually suffering kind of feeling. This calmness is so much better, so much peaceful, so much calmer than that desire feeling. So you can train your mind, okay, desire came, it's going to churn my mind and give me so much agony. I'll wait till it goes, and here is calmness. So the carrot you can show is the calmness that comes, and it always comes. The calmness. So you touch the calmness, touch the calmness, touch the calmness. Mind gets, reconditioned to wait and not give in to the desire, but wait for the calmness, because it's even more superior, more beautiful, and deeper state of mind.
Exactly. Yeah, these are the higher happinesses that that the Buddha speaks about. This, exactly as you said, like the happiness of well, actually, if we think about it, the awakening factors, so even in the context of the awakening factors, the higher happiness of piti or the passaddhi, the calmness of the body, exactly as you're saying, Shiroma, the happiness of the mind when it gets unified, the happiness of the equanimity. There's such beautiful happinesses and so much better ultimately than kamacchanda, than sense pleasure craving. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Amazing. Wow, this has been such a wonderful discussion. I'm mindful that we've actually hit our time, and we haven't yet got onto the other 4 hindrances, which I was going to do today. But that's fine. That's for another time. My suggestion is that between now and we next get together, if you consider what we've been doing today, which is really bringing attention to this, how the mind really works, you know, how seemingly pleasant objects lead to pleasant feeling, and when it's not seen as just feeling, craving arises, and then clinging. So if between now and it's going to be March, isn't it? The first Friday of March.
Yes, March the 7th.
Absolutely.
Is our next gathering? Yes.
Absolutely. We can really develop and deepen the practice in terms of just bringing awareness to what's going on with exactly this. If you like, you can also extend it to the other hindrances, starting particularly with the next one, which is ill will, which is such a huge driver, you know, as we all know in our lives, and much to say about that. So, but we will talk about that next time. So, yeah, just in closing, thank you so much, all of you. It's so wonderful to be with you, and to be able to, for us all to be able to share the Dhamma with each other. Ron?
Yeah. No, I was just thinking in terms of the homework that you just gave, which is so perfect. It's perfect to also bring in the second hindrance of aversion, because when it's unpleasant feeling, what arises?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So you really use the homework for that as well.
Totally. Yeah. And for those of you for whom it works to use your Dhamma diaries, your Dhamma journals, and you don't have to write it on a piece of paper or a physical diary. Some of you might prefer to write it into your iPad or something. That's how I do it. I've got a digital copy of everything. Everybody has different things that work for them. So just finding what works for you in terms of writing these things down. For some people, journaling just doesn't work, and that's fine too. But just looking for tools to support your practice. That's really the key with this. So thank you again so much, and may the merit of this beautiful Dhamma gathering really speed all of us to Nibbana as quickly as possible, and certainly to the very next path and fruit in this very life. You know, and we share that merit with all of our loved ones and all of our relatives, the entire Sangha, and all beings really everywhere throughout the universe, wishing that all of them too may be liberated as soon as possible. May it be so.
Thank you.
Sadhu.
Thank you very much, Paul, for guiding us today and for leading this session. Amazingly insightful discussion. Much gratitude, and we look forward to continuing this discussion next month on the 7th of March, Friday. And thank you also to everybody else who took part in this program. Like Paul mentioned, the candles, lighting the candles, and the lamp, lighting the lamp. The light is getting stronger when we share and learn from each other. So thank you so much for your participation. I will close with the verse that we play at the end, and then take care and see you next at the next session.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Gamba.
Thank you.
Just a minute.
Arogya Paramalabha Santutti Paramang Dhanam Vissas Paramanyati Nibbanang Paramang Sukham.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gihanta.
Thank you, Gyanta.
Thank you.